Well, hey, good afternoon,
Mhm.
Carla. This is Carla Abigail Hernandez. She is the newly appointed worship director at the Houston Vineyard. We're so excited about that. Welcome to the team. So we're going to have a conversation today, and I thought it was a great opportunity to hear your story a little bit and how that informs sort of your heart and vision for where we go as a church in the future with worship. So let's jump in.
Yeah.
You're a pastor's kid.
Yes, pastor's kid. My parents, some of you may know him, Carlos Quintanilla and Virginia. They pastored La Viña, which was our Spanish church next door. And yeah, so I grew up there, and there was, it was a small team, it was a small group of people, and I was just always around. So I just loved helping, and we'd have to set stuff up every time. So I would help the sound guy, and I would run slides or the transparencies. I love those things. And yeah, I was just around. I would hang out behind the drummer, and he would let me kind of come up to the mic sometimes, and slowly made my way to the front. And Christian Viña, who is our worship leader, he would show up on Sundays, and I need some help. Will you join me? And so I just jump up there with him, and I was ready. I knew all the songs because I just have a great memory for learning songs, and so I would just jump up there and get to do that with him. So served there with Christian and those folks for many years. For the years, I think maybe started around like 10 or something. So maybe it would have been about 5 years of just being there and kind of growing up in that space. And then we became one church and merged with our English church, the Houston Vineyard. And I took about a year off of I didn't really merge with that team, as I was a teenager, and that wasn't really seen up there. But Jessica invited me to join, and I have been on there ever since. So it's been about 10 years of being a part of the Houston Vineyard. Maybe, yeah, about 10 years. So yeah, it's just been a wild ride, and it's been awesome.
And I think when it's very easy to look at you today and see the immense sort of God-given talent that he's given you, the voice he's given you, and the way you carry it, and think, okay, like somebody with that kind of talent, they're just there, like they're going to be in there. But I love the part of the story as I hear it is like the first step for you in worship was really just being available. It was really like, what is the thing that is needed? It's being around what God is doing. And so like you even mentioned the slides, which back then, I remember those days perfectly. You had to be really quick. Like you had to know which order was coming. You had to like switch those things out. But even that being a form of worship, and because we were talking a little bit earlier and what you said about why that is so important, can you like share why that was, even as worship, is so important?
So I started, we would use these transparencies, and it was just the sheet, and it would show up there, and so you kind of slide it up and down. But for me, it was just so important because I felt like a great responsibility. Like everybody in there is looking at that screen because they want to follow and sing along. And so if I'm not moving that, if they're not seeing the words, then they can't sing. And so they can't enter worship. So regardless of what's happening, unless they have memorized the songs like me, most people don't have all these lyrics memorized. So they need to look at them. So, like I said, like it doesn't matter. They could be, who knows what they could be doing on stage. It could be the best singers, the best, but yet if the people in the building cannot read the words, cannot sing along, then worship may not really be taking place for some folks. And so I just felt that was so important. So I took great responsibility of, I will slide up and slide down, and making sure that people could sing along. That was super important.
Yeah, it's this concept that like, I'm going to serve where there's a need. Like I want to be a part of what God's doing. And so if it means slides, it means slides. If it means setup, it means setup. And it wasn't about, again, like I think coming back to this, it really wasn't about, okay, you're good enough and you're talented, now you're a part of this. It's like, hey, you're available. There's stuff that can be done. You can participate. And that is like so beautiful. But I think we underestimate the power of willingness and availability.
Yeah.
And so when you look at that, like that was your posture. And I mean, it was from early on, I'm willing, I'm available. But then as you began to grow, there was also people that sort of made space for you. Like you mentioned Christian Berguño, and then even in the Houston Vineyard, Jessica Lewis, like there's people that made space for you. And so how important was that in your journey from, and you talked about this, like from being, you know, the person that does the slides and does a little bit of everything until eventually maybe singing a little bit, and now, you know, maybe leading something, becoming a worship leader. How important was it for the adults in the room, so to speak, because you're like 10 and 15 years old, to make space for you?
Yeah, that was everything. One, the fact that they would be gracious enough to want to love on me and let me be around them. You know, I was a child in La Viña, and they loved me. Christian and Renata and Rocky, like the Jose Palau, like these are people that they didn't have to bother, you know, like,
yeah.
Could have said, you know, we got this, yet they allowed me to be around. And so they just loved on me. They showed me that I was important, that I had value, that I could develop and grow into something more. You know, I got onto the, you know, so now here at the Houston Vineyard, man, Jessica was always pushing me and always opening doors for me and allowing me to kind of walk through them. I got to lead at you know, retreats and conferences. I had the honor of leading at our national conference maybe 2 or 3 times, and all from just, you know, relationship, from knowing folks, remembering, oh, hey, you know, that girl down in Houston, she's, you know, and then all of a sudden here's this 18-year-old up there, no business being up there, but yet the Lord was so gracious. And it's because of these people who saw something in me and said, you know, here, why don't you, you know, you can do it, go for it. That they have been everything. Yeah, these are my mentors. These people have just loved on me so much. And yeah, I wouldn't be where I am without them. And even thinking back in, you know, in youth, and folks like Guillermo, and Aubrey, and so many folks that encouraged me. I forget about my like youth period, because it almost feels like I went from child to adult. But there was those teenage years of being in like the youth band, and that was really fun. And that was, again, people just pushing, like, you can do this, you can do more, you can do more. And yeah, like here I am.
And there's like this journey for you, essentially. I mean, you love music, you're around it, you know, there's your family, there's music all in your family, whether it's singing or instruments or this whole deal. But somewhere along the journey, your love for music turned into sort of like a love for worship, and then as eventually to leading people in worship. Like in that journey for you, you know, you said earlier, like worship, learning to worship yourself, like that becoming a really important. Talk to me a little bit about that journey from somebody who just loved music and was like available and willing, all of a sudden to transform into somebody that leads others into worship.
Yeah, no, yeah, that was important. So yeah, I loved music, loved singing. I love to do things well, you know, so I would practice. I was in choir, you know, I did the vocal lessons, and all of that's good. But eventually I got to a point, I think early teenage years, late teenage years. So entering kind of that young adult, and realizing that that's just not enough. You know, it's not enough to be a good singer. I didn't really like performing. I was in choir and I did that, and I didn't like performing. It didn't satisfy, it didn't fill. But worshiping and getting to do that was so incredible. I just loved it, because I knew I wasn't performing for the people. I was singing to Jesus. I'm pouring out my heart to him, and other people are doing it as well. You know, for me, that would be the greatest thing, is for people to say, thank you for helping me enter into worship. Not like, oh, I just love your voice. Like, that is very kind, and I appreciate that. But I want to help people worship. I'm worshiping, I'm learning to worship. So yeah, learning to worship, to love Jesus. And I'm still in that process. I'm still doing that. And it's it's just so awesome. You know, I just love music, so I just love listening, and it's been important for me to develop some of that, like worshiping myself, uh, playing an instrument, trying to really pull that out and have that space and time with him alone. That's really been the key to going from just being a song leader to just singing the song to really worshiping and leading and hopefully, yeah, picking up what might be happening in the room or what the Lord wants to say or he wants to do in that space and that time, and leading us in that time. So it's
You know, I love what you said, like hearing what God is doing and responding to that. Where are places that you sort of would see that modeled? Was that modeled in sort of like the Sunday setting or in more intimate? Like, where are some of the places you started to recognize that being modeled and saying, oh, wait a minute, there's a little bit more here to than just like singing through a couple songs?
Right. Yeah. I think it came from just, starting to go to some of these retreats and conferences and learning, just gaining knowledge. Lately, the Ferment podcast has been great, just hearing from the worship leaders and people who've been doing it longer. Of course, I saw it modeled Sunday mornings on the team with our different worship leaders, and just knowing, I know that there's more. I know that there's more, and feeling like I hadn't quite grasped it. And it felt for a while, I thought it was a technical thing, like there's something that I don't. And I have just been learning that it's about the heart. It's about, it is all going to come, it's all going to flow from the Holy Spirit. Like, none of that is my own doing. And if I can just connect with him, then I will begin to connect with what's happening in the room and what's happening through this song, what's happening. But yeah, that it flows from him, not from me.
Yeah. I think, but there is something in your sort of availability and willingness that goes back from like the very beginning when you're 10 years old that just sort of keeps playing out. So like at 10 years old, you're available and willing, whatever that looks like, to serve and to be in the room and be a part of it. And as people made space for you, you continued to have a posture of availability and willingness. And essentially, as you're leading and you're sort of surrendering to what God wants to do in a moment, it's the same availability and willingness. Yeah. It's that same posture that says, hey, you've given me gifts, I've worked those gifts, I've worked those talents, I've done all this, but at the end of the day, I'm available and willing.
Exactly. Yeah, that is so true. Yeah, because at first you're just available to man, right? You're just available to the people that's around you, the church. Like, I'm here, how can I help? And there also has to be a lot of humility. Like, I remember Sundays where Christian would come in and say, you're on. And then 20 minutes later, he's like, you're not on. Because someone else is coming. Someone else who I knew, they're better. They're, and I had to like, okay, I know I'm here to serve, and I'm not needed at that time, And so that's really important, to maintain that humility of, I'm just here to serve wherever you need me. And so that is the same with the Lord, right? Because we can be there and we can have our set and we can have a plan, and then he can say no. And we're going to say, but I really like this set. And he can say no. And so we have to be obedient and willing to surrender that control. Of it's not about just what I want to do. It's about what you want to do, Lord, and being open to that.
Yeah, and I think as we create that space, so like you're creating that space for the Holy Spirit to lead and guide, what we're also doing is creating space for other people to experience him in a really real way. Yeah. And at the end of all of this, our goal is that, when we gather, when we worship, that we have an experience with God that is not only deeply personal and sort of we see seen and loved by God, but that is transformational to the way we experience him and others and life. And so the availability becomes such a huge part of that ministry of worship, is sort of like the willingness to step back and say, God, your will, not my will, be done in this moment. Yeah. Even though I've done a lot of work, even though we practiced our set, even though whatever you're up to, we say yes.
Yeah. Or even, stepping up and doing something that you're not completely comfortable doing. Like, and he says, go, and you say no, but like, I'm not ready. But sometimes he will launch you, as he has done for me many times. And it's like, but here we go.
Yeah.
Because he said go. So now we go. Yeah.
So as you look forward, then it's like, okay, so God is like this journey. God has brought people into your life. He's responded to your availability and your willingness. And there's been a bunch of people that have said, here's space, use it. Here's our yes. What do you see going forward for the Houston Vineyard, for worship, for our community? What are the things you see?
Yeah, well, I think the biggest now is I just want to be that person for someone else, for our next generation, kids, our youth, even as small as our toddlers. As I see my son enjoy worshiping. Like, I just want our children to develop that love for Jesus, for worshiping, for music, and hopefully get to walk alongside some of these kids and just push them, like you have said, since you guys came, like, seeing that, what is it, just seeing what God has in them and calling it out. And so I just want to have those eyes for our community, our kids around us, and call out what God has on their heart and what he may have, what plans that he has for them, and get to journey with them. Like, give them a space, like, here, come and learn here, come and play here. Let's enjoy this together. And then hopefully maybe one day, we'll be launching them out to other churches, to other states, around the world. Who knows where they could go? But just to give them a space here, like, that's really my heart is just turned towards our younger generation. And I just want to bring them alongside with me. It's like, let's have fun. Let's go. Let's do this. Because I enjoyed that. I enjoyed growing up in that space. And I just want them to feel that they have permission, they have space to do that too. Like, and then I want amongst our adult, leaders to also have that same posture. Like, guys, let's bring them in as you're seeing them too. Like, I'm not just the only one with eyes. I'm not the only one who's around people. Like, for us to just be looking out for who has a heart, who has a desire. Let's bring them in. Let's bring them into the fold. Sunday mornings is not the only time where we're worshiping, where we need worship leaders and people that are available. There is, our children's ministry, our youth ministry, they need times, small groups, other meetings. Like, I want to see more worship happening everywhere, all the time. Sunday morning is not enough. It's never been enough, but it's definitely not enough in this season.
Yeah.
So yeah, more space.
And I think if somebody young is looking and saying, oh yeah, I'm all in, I think a great thing to tell them is, here's, you don't need talent right now. Don't worry about that. What you need is a posture of availability, willingness, and just to serve and to say, okay, I want to be a part of what God's doing. And then I think when people come with that attitude, like you said, our job is to see it like people did in your life, and then call them into bigger and better things than they could imagine. And so I'm stoked about that. I really am. Yeah. And so I'm going to ask like one COVID question, because we haven't talked about COVID at all. But how has it been for you? Like, so like we've been navigating, whether it's recording like sets and then, editing them into messages that were recorded at my house, and now we're doing live. What is that like? What is God talking to you in this season, as like all the normal for Sundays has sort of been stripped away in essence? I mean, like, even practice times, it's really difficult to do rehearsals or practice together over Zoom. It's just not going to happen. So what do you feel like God has been speaking to you in this season as you lead and as you worship, your personal time of worship? What are some of the things that you feel like God's speaking?
I think one of the biggest for me as I've stepped into this role is really relying on him and to provide the people and the things that we need just to make worship happen. You know, I was very stubborn for a long time to not actually practice and learn an instrument, to be able to lead alone. Like I need someone to join me. I need people to join me. And so I'm of the nature that I want to just I take charge and I will make things happen. And he told me from the very beginning, he's like, you cannot do this. It's going to be very hard if you try to do that. And so he has just continued to remind me, I have placed all of these wonderful people around you. They are there. You are there to do it together. And so that has been really sweet, is to see folks, even though these are awkward times, who have been willing to get together, you know, small groups to lead. You know, it's only maybe 2 or 3 of us, 4 at max maybe.
Yeah.
But they've been willing to come out. And so I'm just so thankful for them. Just, again, that willingness, like, this is what we need to do. We're going to be safe, but we can do it. And so, yeah, because it would be great. I would love to be totally self-sufficient, but he hasn't called us to be self-sufficient. No. You know, he's called us to depend on him. And in this season, it's depending on others, on the other people that he has placed around me. And so I'm just so thankful for the team of people that are around. And so that has been really sweet. That has been really sweet to see the Lord's faithfulness. Of some weeks I'm like, who's going to do it? and we come together. And so that has been really fun to see. So the Lord is just faithful, and he continues to be faithful.
Well, listen, I appreciate you. I'm really grateful. I'm excited for what God has for us as the Houston Vineyard, and specifically in worship. We were starting to experience some really sweet moments with God in the months leading up to COVID. And I really believe that what he has for us is something more like in Spanish, más allá, like a little bit farther than we can imagine. And so I'm really excited. We feel privileged and honored that we get to do this together with you. And as you sort of lead us and in worship and lead the team. So thanks.
Yeah, thank you. I'm so excited. I'm super excited to see what the Lord has in store for the Houston Vineyard.
Good stuff.
Yes.
All right. That's it. Good job. Thanks.